Today we're reviewing Yakuza 2, the original one, not the remake, as I have decided to take on the Yakuza series. I did play and beat the original Yakuza 1 a few years ago and I really enjoyed it. But wow, if Yakuza 2 did not blow my expectations out of the water. But anyways, I'm not gonna spoil my own review. Where should I start with this one? The story. Well, Yakuza 2 is a direct sequel to Yakuza, that game having a somewhat peaceful ending to his main character, Kiryu. So Yakuza 2 has pulled Kiryu back into this world of Yakuza here, their excuse being the looming war between clans. And it's an alright excuse, even if, naturally, a lot of the returning characters are somewhat reluctant to participate. But it works. The new main villain is interesting in a way that while he is a bad guy and does bad things that push the plot forward, he also has some likable traits to him, which make him interesting and make the story more engaging because of it. And that's about as much as I'm willing to spoil. It is very much a classic Yakuza story, and it has a lot of those more complicated politics and too many distinctive names for clans and groups, which would be my biggest complaint, especially as a non-Japanese speaker, as it can be hard to keep track of who is who. Moving to the graphics and looks of this game, it is very much like the original one, but with some small changes, of course, which makes sense as these are both late PS2 games. Which is not the topic for this video, but it's crazy how some great PS2 games came out well past the release of the PS3. Much like in my review of Mafia Remastered, this is just not a setting we see a lot in video games, taking place in an open world modern day Japan without any big fantasy elements to it. Yakuza often gets called the Japanese GTA for this reason, even if they don't really share much commonality. Given the setting of the game, nighttime Tokyo, even if there is daytime as well, areas are very bright and filled with neon lights and busy with people. It gives these maps a really good sense of being lived in. This made even more believable by the amount of buildings you can go into and how much detail there is inside them and outside them. It is a very visually busy game, but purposely so, and I very much enjoy it. In comparison to the original game, it has a couple more unique locations, but they're still very reminiscent of the original main map of the Yakuza series, the Shinjuku ward. I hope I said that right. But there is also a lot more buildings and activities to enter in this one, which leads me to talk about the gameplay, which is such a huge can of worms that truly makes this game unique. But man, is it scary to tackle. At its very basis, it's a 3D beat 'em up game. You have a basic combo, a grab, and you can pick up items and use them as weapons, and a sort of fury mode that allows you to pull off special attacks. But it's also so much more than that. There is a leveling system that works by spending points to level up, one of 3 techniques. These can give you new abilities or make your health or fury bar bigger. These do not only add to the complexity and variety of the combat, but also, because of its choices, it lets you pick what you want to prioritize in your gameplay. The weapons also have more depth than it may initially appear, as they have a very small durability and vary wildly in their handling. You can carry up to 4 weapons, 3 in your inventory and 1 equipped. If you pick up a weapon during a fight, you can keep it, which, spoilers, is something they change in later games. Along with weapons, there is also equipable items that can give you a small change in abilities or give you protection against certain attacks. It's basic, but it's there, and it does also add to that building your own gameplay style feeling. And while this combat is the basis of the game, and what the game will have you do for most of its main story, and while it's fleshed out enough, and the game does give you some variety in it with the setting and the enemies, especially later on in the game, where you have to trust me here, you'll fight things you'd never expect to in a game like this. What I'm trying to say here is Combat stands on its own, but it's not the only way to level up or make money. It is an open world game, and there's a lot of things you can do that will earn you money and XP. Side missions will usually be the ones that earn you the most money and XP. These are usually very cheesy, but in a self-aware way, which makes them pretty funny, but it can also be a stark contrast to the more serious main story, but I personally don't mind it. The other main ways to make money are random fights and the casino. Yes, this game can very much develop a gambling addiction. This might not be a game you want to let your kids play. More on this than the violence, honestly. With this money you can buy weapons or health items or eat at restaurants to replenish health and get a small amount of XP, or use it to go do activities in the open world like bowling. Usually this also gives you a small amount of XP, but really usually the better reward you get from these are weapons or even fighting moves you will receive from completing some sort of gold within these mini games. And yes, you can also spend all your money on women. There is a weirdly big focus on what is called hostesses. I guess these are like escorts, and I'll be honest, I don't know enough about escorts or hostesses to make a comparison here, but it is really not a very sexual thing. There's no sex scenes in this game, at least I don't think there is. It is very much a dating thing, so they have a dating sim within the game. You can take these girls out on dates and buy them gifts, and they'll like you for it, I guess. And I'll be honest, I didn't find this piece of the gameplay super engaging, but I did try, and let me tell you, it's very easy to spend a lot of money on these women. I swear this whole game is a warning for dangerous money management, but it adds to the immersion and world building, I guess. But you can also run, or more accurately, help run your own hostess bar, and again, kinda crazy how much detail was put into this completely optional activity. And I think that's a big deal on why the Yakuza series has such a popular cult following. They don't have the deepest combat, but there is such an unparalleled attention to its world and details that make it stand out amongst the rest. I personally cannot think of any beat-em-up game I have enjoyed as much as this one. Now, I've been very positive, so I am just gonna say some minor annoyances and grievances I have with this game. One is the inventory space. It's very limited and you only have 6 spaces outside of weapons. There is no stacking of repeated items, and you can only transfer these items at the boxes at your hideouts, which can be very annoying when you need to buy an item and you just don't have the space, so you have to run all the way back to a hideout just to make some space for it. And your hideouts are not like spread around the map, they're usually in a corner. So it means if you're on the opposite side of the map, it is a big walk just to get some items. Another grievance is how small the amount of XP from certain activities is. This was probably made to stop people from abusing or exploiting these mini games to gain XP, but it can feel very gimped in a way that it takes away a lot of the desire to play them, even if they're mitigated by the weapon rewards you may get from them. And my final grievance is the time it takes between starting a random fight and finishing it. A random character approaching you means he will first talk to you a few lines of dialogue, followed by an animation that will feel longer and longer as you play the game. And that's before you actually start fighting. A similar thing happens at the end of the fight. It is a minor thing, but if you get caught in a few random fights in a row, it becomes very noticeable. It is very much a limitation of the console at this point, I believe, but still, I hope it gets fixed in later entries. Overall though, this is an amazing game, and I believe, well actually I know the sequels will fix a lot of the problems with this game, as I have already been playing them. But we're talking about Yakuza 2 now, and I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10, and I really hoping it only gets better from here. In terms of recommendations, well, of course I recommend it, but it isn't that simple, since it's not the cheapest PS2 game. to find. There are PS3 and Wii U versions, but unfortunately these are only in Japanese. For English speakers, I do think emulation might be the way to go. The game runs great in emulation and looking exactly like the PS2 version. In fact, it runs best that way, as trying to improve it does bring some problems to the emulation of this particular game, even if they are not game breaking. But yeah, legally there is no good affordable option right now to play this game. And with its remake, Kiwami 2, it's hard to think that there will ever be a good way to play this game now. Which is sad because it is a remake, Kiwami 2 is a remake, but it's a different game, and I wish there was some way that this game was preserved better. But we'll have to see, I guess. So it's really up to you and what you think of emulation and if you're willing to do it. I know a lot of people hate emulation or they hate playing emulated games. You know, just on a personal level, I love emulation. I think it's great that I can play PS2 games when my PS2 is broken. I know some people don't like the fact of using ROMs, or you know, they think it's piracy, and if you know that's their prerogative, that's fine. I don't think it is, especially when the company that makes these games or the publisher isn't providing these games anymore. I really don't mind it, so I guess that's my prerogative as well. Anyways, I won't judge you regardless of what side you take on this. I do hope you play this game though. Anyways, I really enjoyed playing it, and I hope you enjoyed watching this review, and hopefully it makes you wanna subscribe, because that would be great. And give a like and comment. That stuff is free and not emulated. That's such a bad joke. Anyways, goodbye.